when we looked at the association control champion, they need to have adequate blood pressure control in over 80% of their hypertensive patients. And you can see that in that time, they had 101 champions caring for more than 15 million adults, which is pretty amazing. And then another initiative of Million Hearts is called their Million Hearts Hospitals Project, which will recognize institutions that work systematically to improve cardiovascular health of the populations and communities they serve. This will be launching later this summer, so if you're interested, please do check it out on their website, and physical activity will be an integral component of this. And then finally, the last CDC initiative I wanted to mention is called Walk with Ease. So Walk with Ease is a program that targets adults with arthritis, and arthritis we know affects over 54 million US adults. And one of the key management strategies for arthritis is increasing physical activity. And a recent report found that the prevalence of physical inactivity was greater among adults with arthritis who had severe joint pain compared to adults with arthritis who had moderate or no joint pain. And so there are evidence-based physical activity and self-management education programs that are available that can help reduce pain and improve quality of life among adults with arthritis, like Walk with Ease. And this report really shows the significant need for those programs. So Walk with Ease is a 6-week program that is evidence-based to increase physical activity and help improve arthritis symptoms. It can be delivered both either by an instructor-led group setting or through a self-directed workbook. And the program is really intended for adults with arthritis, but it's also appropriate for individuals with a variety of different chronic health conditions. And the evidence has shown that both the group and self-directed workbook versions of the program are effective. And I want to share just a great example of a community clinical linkage success story using Walk with Ease. And so Walk with Ease recently partnered with the National Recreation and Parks Association, or NRPA, with the goal to expand the dissemination and sustained delivery of arthritis-appropriate evidence-based interventions, or AAEBIs, through local parks and recreation. And so Walk with Ease partnered with Parks and Rec agencies that had a known healthcare partner. And together, this Parks and Rec healthcare partnership developed a referral process strategy. So as part of this process, the healthcare provider would first identify eligible patients and send them a communications package with a follow-up call 1 week later. And then the Parks and Recreation program would then enroll the patient into the Walk with Ease program. And then lastly, the Parks and Rec program would then send a post-assessment report back to the referring healthcare organization. And so based on a number of pilot projects, several challenges and recommendations were identified from those pilot projects. So first, in terms of challenges, there were difficulties in fitting the referral into the current healthcare workflow. There were challenges in reaching patients with follow-up calls. And then specifically from the participant point of view, there were challenges in terms of the patients really being at the appropriate stage of readiness to change, difficulties with transportation and scheduling conflicts, prior obligations, and then just lack of familiarity with the program. So then based on those pilot projects, some recommendations for improvement were to identify patients to enroll in the programs in part based on their readiness to change, to better educate the healthcare staff about the referral process, and then to better market the program in the healthcare setting. And then just now, lastly, I'd like to just quickly highlight a program outside of the CDC, which is called ParkRx, and I've mentioned it a few times already in my presentation now. So ParkRx's mission is to decrease the burden of chronic disease, increase health and happiness, and foster environmental stewardship by virtue of prescribing nature during the routine delivery of healthcare by a diverse group of healthcare professionals. And so they work with managers of publicly accessible land and water, as well as healthcare professionals and their respective organizations. And they're just really doing an amazing job. ParkRx America has already incorporated nearly 8,500 parks into its prescribing platform across 34 states, with nearly 200 registered prescribers nationwide. Their website is a fantastic resource, and they have wonderful infographics like the one shown here. On the website, you can search for parks based on a location or address, and then a healthcare provider can make a prescription to that park, and that prescription can then be copy and pasted into an electronic health record. And then also on the website, there are links to some peer-reviewed publications which really demonstrate the evidence base for this program. So just in summary, I hope it's apparent how community clinical linkages can be an effective way to promote physical activity and facilitate behavior change, particularly for adults, and that many opportunities exist to really better help healthcare providers collaborate with community resources, especially to develop these community clinical linkages to help promote physical activity among adults. And then I just hope I've highlighted a number of exciting initiatives that are ongoing to better connect community and clinical sectors. And many of these are leveraging important resources, in particular our natural environment. Thanks so much.
Following in good behavior, if anybody wants to stand up and stretch, please do while we start our last of our presentations for today. Okay, I have a little bit of a different perspective. I'm coming at this topic from a researcher in physical activity interventions as well as an academician, but someone who works really closely with our community partners. So I was really excited to be invited to speak on this panel. I have no conflicts of interest to declare. What I'm hoping to do for the next half hour is explore with all of you the opportunities in leveraging community clinical linkages. And this is specifically focused on our older adults. So we've sort of gone through the lifespan, moving from children to adolescents to adults to now going to older adults, which I pretty much classify as over 50, although a number of our pieces of literature say over 65. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the strategies and also some of the issues. And then I have one example in particular I wanted to share with you, and then talk about some of the community clinical linkages with that particular example. So why focus on physical activity? Well, we know the majority of our healthcare money is actually used for treating preventable chronic diseases that are linked to lifestyle behaviors. And we also know that the single behavior that older adults can do is to positively impact their health status is to engage in physical activity. And I think we all know a little bit is better than nothing. And if you haven't been active in your earlier age, as you age, you can still be active and still get a lot of benefits from it. And depending upon what statistics you read, but clearly older adults are inactive, and anywhere from 80% to more would not necessarily meet our guidelines. I did want to call your attention that I did upload these. I'm not sure how long it takes for them to be uploaded, but you will have access to all these PowerPoints as part of this presentation. John very nicely had included guidelines for adults. Actually, Dr. Joy did too. I wanted to particularly call out the guidelines for older adults, and in particular the piece about older adults needing to do multi-component physical activity that includes balance training as well as aerobic and muscle strength training exercise. So really important when we think about these community clinical linkages and we're making referrals to physical activity programs, we really want to make sure that there's a multi-component program that we're referring to. And that, in fact, older adults must do these physical activities then relative to their own level of fitness. I wanted to call out three recent publications. All of them are umbrella reviews, which is a review meaning that includes both systematic and meta-analysis studies. These were, I think, highly relevant. They were just published this year, but I think they have very important messages why we should all be working with our older adults to get them more physically active. This particular study by DiPietro, actually the evidence showed that regular physical activity, and again, this is after systematic and meta-analysis reviews in the last 10 years, effectively helps older adults improve or delay the loss of physical function and mobility while reducing the risk of fall-related injuries. Very important study here, published in the Medicine, Science, and Sports of Exercise Journal. Second study published in the same issue had to do with cognition and brain health. In particular, if you talk to older adults, what is one of their main concerns when they talk about aging, but losing their cognitive status or having changes in their memory. So very important findings here, that moderate to strong support. Again, this was an umbrella review, so looking at systematic and meta-analysis studies in the last 10 years, that physical activity benefits cognitive function during early and late periods of life, and in certain populations too. The third of the 3 studies that I wanted to share with you, again, this also a systematic umbrella review where they reviewed both systematic and meta-analysis studies in the last 10 years, showed that people with lower extremity osteoarthritis should be encouraged to engage in achievable amounts of physical activity, if even modest intensities. So even if you're not able to meet the recommendations, at least if you're aiming for it. And in fact, choose the minutes that work for them, and that this can really help as far as their bone health and help reduce pain. Really important when we look at some of the major problems that older adults face, and that is arthritis. So why should we be teaming up? And here I'm going to be using a quote from my colleague Paige Dennison, who is here in the audience with us. As community-based organizations and healthcare providers align to improve access to lower cost services that improve health outcomes, evidence-based programs are a natural point of connection. Evidence-based programs, that which really have the research to show that we have beneficial health outcomes. Okay, I wanted to include in my talk 2 resources. One of them is with the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. So should you be interested in reading more about community clinical linkages, if you have to go back and give a talk to your colleagues, having attended this conference, this is one of 2 really good resources in talking about community clinical linkages. And the second one is actually from our colleagues at CDC, and this is a community clinical linkages for the prevention and control of chronic diseases, a practitioner's guide. And again, this is available to you. I included the link here, so that will be available on the handouts that have been posted. And in particular with this tool, I wanted to call your attention to these 7 strategies that are shown here on the slide that are effective for implementing community clinical linkages. So we've heard from the previous 2 speakers about the importance of these linkages and about examples of some of them. What I'd like to show on this particular slide then are the strategies really that have been shown to be effective for this community clinical linkage. So 1 is the importance about learning about community and clinical sectors. So whether you are in the community learning about the clinical sector, or if you're in the clinical field, the importance about learning about your community partners. Who is out there? Who do they serve? What is their mission? What kind of funding sources are there? What are the unmet needs? It's important to identify and engage key stakeholders. So who really can benefit from this? What kind of partnerships are there? What are the churches doing in your area? What are the parks doing? We've just seen some great examples of working with the parks. Negotiate and agree on goals and objectives of the linkage. What strengths do you bring as a clinical partner? What strengths do you bring as a community partner? Look at the operational support that's needed. Who's going to be doing the coordinating and managing the linkage? Can you designate a specific person? Is there a person perhaps already in your agency who does this kind of work? Grow the linkage with sustainability in mind. I know too often we engage in these projects and we don't look long-term. We look at, what are we going to do for this summer? What are we going to look at this year? What do we need to do in order to look at long-term sustainability? How do we plant those seeds from the very beginning? And then really important as far as the evaluation. How are you going to evaluate this linkage? Is it just the number of people that show up? Is it the number of agencies who partner? Is it the number of research dollars you secure? Or are you really looking at individual health outcomes? Are you looking at some kind of organizational level outcomes? So if you want to just keep these in mind, I think it's important as far as what are some of these known strategies that can be put in place in order to be successful with your community clinical linkages. This was an interesting article by Porterfield and Company, published in the American Journal of Public Health. They also did a scoping review, actually, and also an environmental scan. And they wanted to look specifically at what are the factors that may be contributing to clinical and community linkages. And you can see, although this is a fairly busy slide, that a number of the things that we just saw in the CDC effective strategies are also linked here. So what are the building blocks that start? What does the intervention actually look like? And then what are the short-term and long-term outcomes? I frequently think of this as a lot. Worked, what do we measure as we go through, and then what are some of the outcomes? And again, this is a great article, and you have the link then available in your handouts. I wanted to particularly focus on one physical activity program. This is a community-based group exercise program called Enhanced Fitness. How many of you are familiar with Enhanced Fitness? Okay, well then great, you're going to walk away with learning about a new program. So unlike my previous colleagues who talked about multiple programs, I'm going to talk about one program, but then talk about its different partnerships in the community. I'll have 4 different examples. So Enhanced Fitness was originally developed in partnership with University of Washington Health Promotion Research Center, Sound Generations, and Group Health Cooperative. Group Health Cooperative is now Kaiser. And we're very pleased that Paige Dennison is in the audience, and she does, Paige, hand? There we go, thank you. She does manage and oversee the Enhanced Fitness out of Sound Generations. I'm going to go back one slide here. So Enhanced Fitness has over currently 1,450 classes. It's offered in 800 different sites. These sites might be churches, senior centers, community centers, hospitals, any variety of centers in the community. These are actually advancing on their own. It's in 44 states and the District of Columbia. These are 1-hour classes. They're taught 3 hours a week. It's an ongoing program. It does include all 4 components when we look at exercising. So, Elmer, can you help me with that? I think these are advancing, but I think we might just leave it as it is. So, certified fitness trainers that are used, and with the license that comes with the program, there is data that you can acquire as far as an organization. We'll just leave it as is, thank you. And individual reports are also available. So Enhanced Fitness has significant amount of evidence around it. We actually know from the research that it maintains or improves physical function. It protects against falls and fall injury. There's a significant amount of social benefit, and it does very much promote a physically active lifestyle. Okay, we also know from other studies that it actually reduces Medicare cost, utilization cost, and in a CMS study, there was $945 of annual savings in healthcare costs for individuals who participated in Enhanced Fitness. We also know it's associated with decreased unplanned hospitalizations and decreased mortality rates. So significant evidence of the benefit of this for our older adult community. This is an example of a report that an agency may receive. This shows attendance history. It shows, this is actually one for an individual. It shows their change in their physical activity. And Enhanced Fitness also includes some fitness checks. So you can have individual reports on the 3 different fitness activities, which are chair stand, arm curl, and timed up and go. So typically these reports can be generated. The instructor can work with each of the individual clients and show their progress over time. Participants love this kind of feedback. Enhanced Fitness is really tightly connected and has multiple partnerships it's developed over the years, and you can just see a number of them here. I wanted to show a short video clip. This is actually Enhanced Fitness at a YMCA, and I think there's no better voice for Enhanced Fitness but the individual participants themselves. So here is a short 3-minute clip.
Enhanced Fitness is a class to help you stay active, to challenge you to try new things, and to lead an independent lifestyle. It really fits a lot of different groups, a lot of needs, and we modify so that if you are sitting in a wheelchair, we figure out a way to make it work. The Enhanced Fitness program is a program that is evidence-based. We start out with a little fitness assessment, and in 16 weeks, we do another one. And at the end of the 16 weeks, we actually give a report. Everyone is challenged and everyone feels like they have a place in the class.
I was in physical therapy, which ended last December, and I talked to my therapist about what could I do to continue the progress that I had made. She suggested that I come over to the Y and get into this class.
I was diagnosed with a particular condition that meant I needed movement, and the class provided that for me.
We always start with a warm-up, and then we do some balance exercises and cardio. We go into arm and leg weights. This class is endorsed by the Arthritis Association, and so you're not having to hold weights. You can put them around your wrists and still participate. And then after weights, we have just some stretching and cool down.
My balance has improved, my muscle tone, because we're using the arm weights and leg weights. I have built some muscle in my arms and legs both.
I enjoy it. I like coming, gets my day started.
I mainly have noticed confidence, I think, in moving. And I always, walked a lot and things like that, but I fell once or twice, tripped, and then just, your confidence, you just don't feel the same. So this has helped with that.
They're my friends, we're a family, and they're involved in my life and they give me advice.
It's a great group of people, very diverse professionals and retired people, so it really is fun.
I'm a recent widow, and so this was a way of getting out and having something I could do and would enjoy. So that's really, in many ways, what I get out of it, in addition to keeping my physical strength.
We miss people when they don't show up today. We were kind of going through the people that weren't here today, so it really is important for everybody to show up.
It passed the time before you know it. An hour seems hardly enough, but it's enough, but it seems hardly enough because it goes so fast. The days that I don't come, I feel something is missing.
It's just fun, it's a community.
So that is an example of enhanced fitness at one of the Ys. You know what I was really struck by? When you listen to the videos of the children participating in exercise, one of the things that I heard them say was it increased their confidence. And I was marveled at the fact that this video also talked about increasing confidence. So, the importance of these group activities around physical activity, the different types of confidence that can be increased. So I wanted to show 4 different examples of how we actually have seen enhanced fitness as far as relative to community clinical linkages. One of them is the National Kidney Foundation in Michigan. You may or may not know about them, but we have a lot of nonprofits here in the United States, and this one in particular as far as improving the life of people with kidney disease. And in particular, I thought it was interesting that their mission includes enhancing the lives of Michigan residents through their patient services and prevention programs, as well as educational programs. And I think their partnership with Enhanced Fitness has really done that. So they started offering Enhanced Fitness in 2008, and they have reached over 9,000 participants in the last 10 years. I think that is just incredible. They are now offering 88 classes a week in 5 counties. And the cost per class varies anywhere from $3 to $3 a class. Enhanced Fitness is a program such that there's a training of master trainers. So National Kidney Foundation has trained 4 master trainers, and they then train instructors. And one of the things that I was really impressed with the National Kidney Foundation is that fact that their instructors actually are from the communities. And so they go back and feel a real commitment to teaching in the community they're from. There's a number of different funding agencies that the National Kidney Foundation has secured in order to support the program. and that most recently they were approved by the American Specialty Health as a Silver and Fit location, so meaning that there would be a Medicare Advantage reimbursement plan. Here's a picture of a number of the different trainers, and they are there with Paige Dennison, as I referred to earlier, who's in the middle. Here's an example of an enhanced fitness program management report where you can see that these reports are generated, and it does give the organization information about the gender, about individual race, about income levels, ethnicity, and education. I think the National Kidney Foundation does a really great job at highlighting the program. This is a newsletter where they highlight one of the participants, and she says, "I can tell that I'm much better with balance. It helps with everything." There were a number of different evaluations that were shared with me. I thought these were particularly interesting. This one talked about going to her physician's office, and the physician asked her how she felt. And she said, "Great." And the physician said she was the first person ever to say that she felt great. So I thought that was cute. So this is someone who's really benefited from the participation in Enhanced Fitness. Here's another quote talking about the value of Enhanced Fitness, how it helps with camaraderie, it helps with stamina, and it also helps with balance. And in particular, this person says, "Falling is not on our agenda." So why is Enhanced Fitness such a success? The staff there, they say Enhanced Fitness creates raving fans. I mean, isn't that what you want? A program that creates raving fans, because you know they're going to be talking to their friends and family. It connects people and improves the overall health, as you can see from these reports, and that these referrals then come from family and friends. So it shows that we in the clinical field have a to increase to programs like this. The instructors are passionate, and that one of the things the Kidney Foundation does is they go out and do demos of Enhanced Fitness. So they go to fairs or other situations in which there are a lot of older adults so that they can show brief demonstrations of Enhanced Fitness as ways to recruit more people. So that was one example. The second example I wanted to show you was Dignity Health. Dignity Health is a Catholic nonprofit organization that delivers health care to diverse communities in California, Nevada, and Arizona. It's actually the 5th largest healthcare system, the largest hospital provider in California. So they have a robust offering of health promotion programs, and here you'll see on their website, down at the bottom, where they're talking about the different lifestyle behavior modifications, heart disease programs, but there they list Enhanced Fitness among a number of other opportunities that their members have access to. So Dignity Health launched Enhanced Fitness in 2016. So 2 years ago, they have over 1,000 participants. And Abby is this wonderful ambassador of Enhanced Fitness. I had several conversations with her, and you could just hear her enthusiasm for this program. And they are continuing to expand it beyond their wellness centers, including senior facilities as well as in the hospitals. And they do get referrals, both from individuals, friends, and families, but also from primary care and specialty individuals. And here you also see an example of a report out that you would get from Sound Generations, and you can see their attendance, you can see gender, you can see race, income, ethnicity. So wonderful reports both for the instructors, but this is also great to use as you go out to possible funders and they tell you who's in your class, who are you serving, so you can share with them these kinds of profiles then. Here's one that actually shows the number of chronic diseases that the participants may have, as well as their marital status and their household status. And one of the reasons I call this to your attention is that we know social isolation is a really big issue with older adults, so it really gives you a feel for how many people are living alone, how many people are single, and you can see how much your program is being able to reach out to them. Here's an example specifically of some of the improvements in the 3 different fitness checks that are done. You can see there's a comparison with the original Rickley and Jones data, which is both age and gender match, so you can see how your own participants improve. So why is Enhanced Fitness such a success at Dig Health? Well, participants can chart their progress. They can really see for Lisa. Okay. The third example I wanted to use was Kaiser Foundation Health Plan. Kaiser's been a partner with Sound Generations and Enhanced Fitness for many years. They helped with our initial research development. They host 6 classes a week, and they do it in collaboration with the Park and Recreation for the Medicare Advantage members and also non-members. So wonderful opportunity at Kaiser. And when you look up on the website and what Kaiser has to say as far as outcomes, they have done their own research and they realize that people who are participating in enhanced fitness actually have a lower risk of falls. They are particularly interested in targeting those older adults who are at higher risk for poor health outcomes, and they very much value partnering with other community agencies such as Sound Generations in Seattle. The fourth and final example that I wanted to give you actually has to do with a recent research study that was conducted out of University of Washington Health Promotion Research Center. And this was a partnership with both the YMCA and Sound Generation. And the idea was to test an intervention to increase the capacity of Ys to reach out to PT clinics. Okay, so here you have the YMCA's wonderful programs. How many of you work in YMCA's? Our center wanted to do was test an intervention to increase the capacity to reach out to physical therapists. So how can the Y staff reach out after your prescription is over to see the physical therapist? So the intervention had 2 components. One was a toolkit and included sort of tasks and resources, and the other one was technical assistance calls. This particular slide actually shows what the toolkit looks like, and you can see that there were a number of different activities. This was over a 7-month period where the staff at the Y worked with an advisor in looking at ways to engage leaders, in doing some planning, to look at what kind of outreach there was going to be to the physical therapist, to evaluate which physical therapists they were already looking at, to actually contact them. And the goal was to think that maybe the study would allow for increased number of new members of Enhanced Fitness. But in fact, the study, and was a randomized clinical trial, did not show that. There were actually no results, null as in N-U-L-L. So the fact that this particular intervention only came to show that there were some really key issues. And some of these issues are showed on the slide about the need to really look at a strategic focus initially to make sure that physical therapists were on board, to make sure that the Y had adequate staff to do this kind of outreach, to make sure there was budget for the staff to do this outreach, to make sure that the leadership was really actively involved. So very important lessons, and if you think back to that original framework, we really need to look at a multiple level component in order for our community clinical partnerships to work. So my key take-home messages, there's one for each of you depending upon what roles you play, but I think clearly we need to conduct more research to actually identify strategies that are effective in sustaining effective clinical linkages between clinical units and community settings. Those of you who are involved in policies, we do need to create more policies in that support clinical and community linkages. If you're a provider, I think we need to support and use opportunities to build the linkages. Think of ways that you can be creative, get support from your leadership, do some thinking around it, do some outreach, make sure that both the missions of both your organization and the organization you're working with, it serves a purpose. And then as patients, we too need to request or encourage stronger relationships between clinical providers and community agencies. So I think we all have a great call to action. I wish you all a very great conference. Thank you very much. That concludes my portion. I did bring these handouts. It's a research brief from our most recent study. They're on the front seat.
And so thanks again for your contributions today. Again, if you have a question, please go to the mic in the center of the room since the session is being recorded so we can capture your remarks. I guess I'll take the moderator's prerogative and mention one thing that Cynthia asked me to talk about since she had to leave early for a conflicting engagement. And that was just to follow up a little bit on assessment of pediatric physical activity. And she mentioned very early on in her presentation that there wasn't kind of a standardized assessment tool for physical activity in clinical settings. And that is true. We have developed and implemented one at Intermountain Healthcare in Utah, and the primary measure is asking a child or parent how many days per week does that child achieve 60 minutes or more of physical activity, because we know a child is not very good at recall. I can imagine my own kids trying to figure out, well, how many minutes of moderate intensity activity did I get playing lightsaber with my friend at recess? And then it goes on to ask some very specific questions around, does your child walk or bike to school, have daily physical education at school, participate in after-school sports, dance, martial arts, or outdoor play? Does your child have less than 2 hours of recreational screen time? And is physical activity something your family wants to work on? So we have that implemented into our electronic health record. Our pediatricians are using it at well child visits. So hopefully in the not too distant future, I'll be able to share that. But there are certainly many of us around the country who are trying to kind of wrap our arms around how do we assess physical activity in clinical settings in a way that isn't burdensome to the provider or to the family or patient, and provides us useful, meaningful data that we can actually act on and connect families to physical activity resources. So I'll pause there, but Cynthia wanted me to share that with all of you. So Janet, go ahead. Please introduce yourself and say where you're from.
Hi, thanks, Liz. Janet Fulton, CDC from Atlanta. That was a great session. Thank y'all. With regard to older adults, we have the new guidelines use the word multi-component in the guideline. There was a lot of discussion around multi-component when we were writing the guidelines. I'm really interested in how the concept of multi-component is actually practiced, whether it's in enhanced fitness or other programs that you're aware of, and would love to know how it's actually operationalized.
I'm going to actually ask Paige Dennison to come up and address it from an enhanced fitness perspective. I think it's a really good question. So Paige Dennison oversees the enhanced fitness program at Sound Generations, and I will ask her to address that question, Janet.
Hi, thanks for the question. Yes, so I mean, in every class, in every 1 hour class for the ongoing class, there's always, a warm-up, cardiovascular work, cool down, static and dynamic balance worked in, as well as strength training with the arms and legs as appropriate by fitness assessment, and then, the cool down. And within that framework and the protocols in that framework, there's a lot of room to kind of mix and match within guardrails around what should be done. So, there's a lot of room around there. So does that help for enhance? Okay.
Thanks, Paige. I think the other piece I would add, Janet, is that I think in working with older adults, it's important that if they do one particular activity, for example, I'm really interested in mall walking, and that, in fact, may not have all these multiple components. So really encouraging them to get, let's say, strength training in another aspect of their activities. So not discouraging them from doing something they like if it doesn't have, quote, multiple components, but encouraging more the diversity in the activities that they're doing to get it. Does that address it? Yeah. I think we frequently, the language.
Go so far as to say public health. We do a phenomenal job of confusing people in quality of life and your health. So I'll get off that soapbox.
I think it's really relevant. I'm teaching a health promotion class for nurse practitioners this quarter, and we just had a module on health literacy. And it is pretty incredible how poorly we as healthcare providers do as far as making sure our messages are clear to our patients. And it is not asking, do you understand what I'm saying? Because they will say yes. And in fact, by their behavior, they don't. And so we really need to become more health literate, and this includes this language we're using here. So how do we translate the term multi-component that someone with a third grade level of education can understand?
Yeah, right.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Meyer. I'm from North Dakota State University in Fargo, North Dakota. I apologize, I missed the very beginning, so if my question's redundant, you can just tell me to sit down. But I'm really interested in group kind of group visits and kind of the billing and coding that could go along with that. And I'm wondering if any of you have done any work along that. We talk a lot about referrals, but it tends to be another barrier, another place to go that we lose people. So what could we do differently when we already have those people in a space?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're not using group visits, for preventive care at Intermountain Healthcare. People kind of talk about it, but nobody actually does it. I think they're going to come. We're seeing more and more in particularly for around prenatal care, for example, for healthy moms. And that would be a great way also to have a group of women who are having a shared experience, engage in physical activity during the course of their pregnancy. So I think there's more to come on that. We didn't address it here in this session in particular, but love to see more of it for all the reasons that have been mentioned.
I will just add very briefly that I presented on some survey data from DocStyles, and we asked about where healthcare providers are referring for intensive behavioral counseling, and I mentioned that the most common site that they refer to was to a program within their medical facility. We didn't get any more granular than what that means, but that may be capturing an element of what you're talking about. But yeah, I don't think we have much more information beyond that.
I really see this as an open discussion. Is anybody doing group visits here in the room? Any experience with it?
I can just mention that I worked with a Minnesota-based healthcare system, and they were trying to figure out how to do it because they have an on-site fitness center and they have the on-site referral, but it's still not enough. It's still a barrier to get those people to go from one side of the street to the other, and it's scary because it looks like a fitness center and there's athletes in there and all sorts of things happening. So just, I think we need to do more around group visits. Don't know if you had any more resources, but thank you for sharing.
Hi, my name is Deborah Porterfield. I'm at UNC Chapel Hill School of Medicine. Thank you to all the presenters. This is a question specifically for Dr. Omura. Would you take us back to one of the results, one of your slides, and I think you showed us that only 4% of the responding providers said that they don't know what to say or how to discuss or how to counsel. And I'm thinking about that number as compared to someone had an earlier statistic of 28% of family practice doctors don't know the guidelines. So what do you think about the number in your survey? And then also, what do they need to know? They need to know guidelines, but what else do physicians need to know?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really, I'm trying to think back to the exact phrasing of our survey question. It was more general than just knowing the actual physical activity guidelines. For example, it was just, why don't you counsel? And I think it was like, I don't know what to say, essentially. And so I think part of that really comes down to improving education and training for healthcare providers and really helping them understand, I think, part of the health literacy piece. And all the way, from the early days of medical education and residency all the way up to continuing education, and then helping them also, Liz and I have talked a lot about helping them also engage in active lifestyles themselves. Because we know that that's a predictor of their behavioral counseling to their patients. So I think sort of taking this a multi-component approach to healthcare providers.
First, teach them multi-component.
Yeah. Yes, and sort of take a sort of approach them from multiple angles, I think. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Thank you.
Yeah, John, I was going to ask that same question, is whether you asked about knowledge gaps in the DocStyles survey, because that's something that we definitely hear from our own providers. And we're 7-8 years plus into having a physical activity vital sign in our electronic health record and a very well-defined SBIRT process of screening, brief intervention at the point of care, and referral to treatment, with third-party coverage, for physical activity resources, within our healthcare system, and we still have knowledge gaps, and we still have to help the providers who, they don't want to do something they're uncomfortable doing, right? And so if we have insufficient training in medical school, residency, fellowship, and continuing medical education, they don't want to do something that they don't feel comfortable with. And going through, they learned the trans-theoretical model, but they can't remember what comes after pre-contemplation. Is that preparation or contemplation? We talk about these behavior change strategies, and we talk about the 5 A's, and we talk about, other behavior change frameworks. But I just, they can't remember them. what they can really remember to do is how to write a prescription. And, one of the things that we've been talking about, is maybe before you write the prescription for fluoxetine, you give them an exercise prescription, if they've got mild mood disturbance, or anxiety. If they're not sleeping well, before you write the prescription for Ambien or Sonata, talk about the value of physical activity. Before you write the prescription for lisinopril for their, slightly elevated or low, high blood pressure, give them a physical activity prescription. Talk to them about their dietary sodium intake, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not sure what's going to, I think as we move into a pay for value from, a population health model, from a revenue-based system, where you get paid more for doing, now you're going to get paid for doing less. The financial model is do less. Prescribe the most effective, least expensive option. Maybe we'll start to get more traction, for things like that.
And I will just also put a plug in, for our allied health professionals as well. And maybe that's sort of a low-hanging fruit is a good place to start is with nurses and nurse practitioners and physical therapists and all of those incredibly important allied health professionals who may be not the better place to start, but an important place to start as well to sort of fill that gap.
Yeah, and I think another thing that didn't come up in this presentation, but I think is an intriguing idea, and there was an article published in the Journal of Physical Activity and Health within the last couple of months, was the use of community health workers in promoting physical activity. And again, they are oftentimes, they may be employed by a healthcare system, but they're actually, community members, and they're living in communities, and they have, the best idea of what those community values are. And what are some of those community resources? And they may put together a neighborhood walking group, or a kids' play group, to help with working moms, or an after-school program. So, I don't know if you guys want to comment at all. The scoping article that was published in JPAH, are any of the authors in the room before I say anything about it? Talked about the fact that, I think I wrote it down in one of my other books, that there were limited efforts in this area. There was limited knowledge by community health workers around physical activity promotion, but that it represented great opportunity. So, here's an idea, throwing it out to this group to say, if you're working, in that social determinant of health space or in that community-based health promotion and prevention space, that working with community health workers, I think, is novel. For physical activity promotion, and may be a way to kind of have a little bit, maybe some more cultural sensitivity to activity in communities. Any other questions? If you guys don't have them, I'm just going to keep asking them. So Baja and Paige, maybe I'll ask both of you. So can you talk a little bit more about some of the outcomes, the objective outcomes in enhanced fitness? I'm interested in both the behavioral outcomes, the fitness outcomes, as well as potentially mental health outcomes, that are measurable, because, you manage what you measure, and that's ultimately what gets paid for.
Baja, do you want to cover the original study, or?
Right.
Yeah, so in the original studies, there was a 52% decrease in depressive symptoms seen in the original trials, and 14%, I think it was, in social activation, and then right around 35%, 36% around physical function for the intervention as it started out. And we've seen those continue to be hit through time, as well as, kind of now more sensitive measures are coming up to sort of figure out how to really, parse that social isolation piece, and that group piece that we see being so key. So those are some of the things that you asked about. We also have seen, decrease in the healthcare costs, and really the really interesting thing. I used to work in youth, with youth around physical activity, and you would never have teach at a school, at an elementary school, and have a presumption of the same curriculum for kindergarten through 6th grade, or kindergarten through 12. And yet we take folks from, 50 to 100 plus in our classes and think about that together, So these classes are really meant from fit to frail. We do use the Reekley and Jones norms. We have some others that we can use as well and track over time. But I think that's kind of what makes this particular intervention unique, is that assessment piece, as well as self-reported health that we're tracking and attendance. So, and then having the fitness instructor really take a look at that and be able to talk to the participant about consistency, to have that long-term relationship. We always talk about these being socially enduring units that are created, and to have that long-term consistent relationship so you can sit and go through something like the individual activity summary that Baja put up, and you understand why that person's attendance tailed off because they were having a caregiving crisis with their spouse. But if you can pull out that one nugget of, continued strength in arms, even though, they're not moving that much, so they've lost some strength in their legs, if you can pull that out to motivate people to continue to come, as well as the social piece, there's just a lot, in that kind of a model to look at. And, also we have this, I also serve on the Evidence-Based Leadership Council, and we have this desire to bring all of these evidence-based programs, Walk with Ease, all these programs that track measurable results, and really leverage them across, all the way across, so that if you have a program that is addressing fear of falling through workshops, then you can, refer. So you've got medical referrals coming, you've got referrals coming from within the community, and it really becomes this, whole process of back and forth. I've kind of digressed from what you asked, but it really is a really big picture, and community health workers are a big part of it. We also have a health action planning, health coaching piece, and we use community health workers in that work, and Primaturas and other folks to reach people in underserved communities. So,
yeah, that's fantastic.
yeah.
I will add that there are, as interesting as healthcare recognizes, finally, I might add, that perhaps zip code manages or means more than your genetic code. That we have to address unmet social needs, and in order to improve the health of individuals and communities. And these platforms are being developed that really kind of connect a healthcare system and an electronic health record to community-based organizations and community resources. And there's a number of them that are out on the market right now. Many of them are nonprofit organizations. And although they are originally designed to kind of connect people around food insecurity and housing instability and interpersonal violence and transportation needs, unmet utility needs, they are also going into health behavior. So you can access diabetes prevention programs, you can access the Walk with Ease program in some communities. And so people who are identified in your healthcare system who have either unmet social needs or have a need for community resources around physical activity or nutrition, et cetera, you can often use these linkages or these platforms now to link them to a community-based organization. The referral goes electronically. That organization reaches out directly to the patient, and then when the patient receives that service, they send communication back to the healthcare system. So it gets to what both Baja and John talked about, which is this idea of closed-loop communication and how important that is. Because certainly, as a physician, if I refer somebody to a physical therapist, I'm going to get a note back. I'm going to know if that patient showed up, what type of treatment they received, and whether or not it was beneficial. And now we can do it in some of these other areas as well. So if you go back into your own healthcare systems or community-based organizations, look for some of those platforms that are starting to come onto the market. So with that, we're going to have to conclude, so our next session can start. Thank you again for coming, and just in the interest of time, if you have additional questions, we'll be outside the doors of Ballroom A. Please come back at 5:15 for the Exercises Medicine keynote lecture with Dr. Fiona Bull, who will be talking about moving the world to create a healthier place, or something like that. Thank you very much.
It was really nice, the flow between the three.
Yeah, I thought so too. Did you post yours? Do you all have access to our handouts? Do you check? I don't know. You have a little